Excited to have you with us this morning. So today's webinar will be all about how agility can help you enhance your planning process. Before getting started, we would like to take a quick minute to introduce today's speakers. So I'll start with myself. I'm Salma Ghersi. I'm a manager within the finance and performance practice at Solution BI Canada. I've accumulated over 9 years experience in finance, more specifically around finance process optimization, as well as system implementation.
Hi everyone, I'm Shayan Ghulam Abbas. I'm a senior manager with Solution BI. I'm head of the finance software there. I gather over 15 years of experience around finance, mainly finance transformation projects, also EPM solution implementation. I've led numerous of mandates around implementation of solutions such as VENA. Thank you for joining today. Very excited to be with you today.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley De Silva. So I'm the regional manager overseeing Ontario, Quebec, and the East Coast provinces. I've actually spent the last 12 years on the professional services side implementing FP&A solutions for TM1, Clarity Systems, Longview. And for the last 8 years, I've spent leading implementations and teams on the professional services side for VENA. So very excited to meet you and help share some of my knowledge as we walk through the session.
Hey everyone, Drew McDonald here, solutions consultant with VENA. I've been here for roughly 2.5 years, and I actually began working with Ashley on the professional services side as a consultant. So bring a lot of experience working within the application and happy to speak to it today.
Thanks everyone. So on the agenda today, we will first start on advising you on how to make your planning process more successful. Then we would demonstrate some key features of the VENA tool in a live demo for about 35 minutes. We will then share some customer success stories, and we will end with a Q&A session. So we strongly encourage you to ask your questions in the chat box as they come. However, we will only be able to answer these questions at the end of the presentation. Also, both questions in French and English are welcome. And finally, you will notice that during the presentation, there are some poll questions that will appear on your screen. We would be really happy if you can answer those, as it will give us a visibility on the systems used in our network. Let's get started.
Thank you, Salma. So just before we dive in the solution, I just want to do a quick recap on who Solution BI Canada is. So we're a consulting firm based out of Montreal. Basically, we have 3 business units. The analytics, handling every project regarding to data integration, business intelligence, artificial intelligence. Then we have the finance software that has a focus on the finance function, helping companies to improve their processes and implement new tools. And we are, these 2 business units are backed by La Fabrique. La Fabrique is our shared services and delivery center. So we handle projects through La Fabrique, giving more flexibility to our team to deliver successful projects. I'm going to do a quick focus on the finance software. So we have 3 pillars around our finance software. The first one is strategy and transformation. We handle every type of project around process optimization, diagnosis of the finance function, maturity assessment, benchmarking, and we help our customer to implement those changes in their finance function. The second pillar would be the system selection and implementation. So we handle ERP system implementation, of course, EPM solution implementation, consolidation systems, disclosure management, and everything that is related to data visualization for finance, so analytics for finance. And the last piece of our offer is the operational support that we propose to our client. So basically, it's helping them in their closing activities, their financial system administration or maintenance. So these are the three pillars of our offer. Just a quick reminder. So I'll let the team dive into the subject of today. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Cheyenne. All right, how to achieve success in financial planning.
Okay, so I wanted to give you a little bit of background on VENA itself. We actually came into the market in 2011, mainly to solve the challenges that companies were experiencing in their planning, reporting, and consolidation. And as we looked and spoke to many, many customers, we noticed a trend, right, in how they would, solve and address this problem. So quite often, organizations will look internally to see their own ERPs, what bolt-on modules they can add. They might look at smaller reporting solutions like your FRX, your management reporter, and realize quite quickly that this is just a Band-Aid solution and it's not robust enough. So they'll go out into the market and look at, your generic planning solutions, right? So you'll have, you have your Profix, your Adaptive, which are great for vanilla-based FP&A planning. But what we've noticed and what our customers are telling us, that especially in the last 6 months, as soon as there's a bit more complexity, you have to do more revenue modeling, more frequent analysis to understand your cash, what folks are tending to do is they're reverting back to Excel, where you have that more familiarity, more comfortable environment, and you're more flexible, right? So that's the FP&A side. Companies also have to look at their financial close, or the accounting side, at their financial close processes, like your account recs consolidation. And now you can see quite quickly, and what customers are telling us is that over the years, they start to adopt this Frankenstein approach to software, where there's no single point of truth, there's no single administrator, and you're at the whim of having people leave. And when they leave, they take all the information with them, and you're left with arduous amounts of times, weeks or even months, having to onboard and train new people on a new language, new software. So what often ends up happening is that these software gets shelved, right? And that's where VENA comes in. Okay, so we serve as like the one source of truth for self-serving reporting, planning, and consolidation. But on the other side, very important to us, is coming up with a solution that's super easy to learn and adopt. Okay? And that's what's translated to our amazing success. So we've been in the market for 10 years, and we have a robust team. We're up to 400 people. Our customer experience team, 100 people wide, and we have a great support network with our partners that is translated into our 99% customer satisfaction score, where we spend across 800 plus customers with 100,000 users. And as a company ourselves, we continuously strive to be the best place to work, right? So our mantra and our vision based on our core values, that includes diversity and inclusion, gender equity, environmental advocacy, all things that are very important.
Thanks, Ashley. So Solution BI's team has worked with many organizations from various industries in optimizing their planning process. And when you want to optimize a process, the first thing you want to do is understand the current state. And that means understanding their challenges. So what we've noticed is that a lot of these organizations share common challenges. And we've listed a few on the screen here. So the first one being manual process. So we've noticed that a lot of their planning process is done within Excel. So every month they would do these manual tasks, such as reconciling data from various sources or simply maintaining calculation formulas in their spreadsheets, which leads us to the second challenge. So by doing all these manual tasks, that would leave them with little to no time to perform more valuable analysis. Another challenge would be that they're using a lot of heavy Excel reports across their various business units, and these reports are not always standardized, which makes the process not as flexible as they want it to be, but also it makes it really complex when it comes to consolidating all this information, and makes them sometimes question the data integrity. Finally, poor visibility. What we mean by that is that it's hard for them to know all the tasks that have been performed, what is left to be done, or who are the collaborators. So all these are really critical when you're trying to perform this process in an efficient manner and meet your deadlines. So of course, these are only a few challenges. I'd be curious to know if you're experiencing similar challenges. You can let us know in the chat box. And keep an eye during the live demo, because we will show you how to address these challenges. So Ashley, you can show us some of the features of VENA and how they can address these challenges.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's where the expertise from Solution BI and the great technology for VENA pairs up really effectively. So from a software standpoint, VENA essentially brings you the best of both two worlds, right? So you consider the power and flexibility that you're accustomed to with Excel. Now pair this up with the enterprise-grade functionality and robust feature set, like your workflow automation, your auditability, your security, version control, all wrapped up in a high-performing cloud-based technology. Now, the results are obvious, right? This allows users to gain a very efficient and easily repeatable process. It makes sure that you have total finance ownership. So across our 800 customers, majority of them are finance owned. This means that you don't have too much dependency on IT, which is really important. So this is creating a team that's very capable, empowered to really scale the solution across the business. That means creating one source of the truth, eliminating all of those manual challenges, creating a very standardized, controlled process that allows you to gain accuracy, speed, and most importantly, trust in the numbers. Okay. And in today's day and age, we're in interesting times. I think if you're a business in today's world, it's simply the survival of the fittest. So we ask ourselves, what is it that makes the most successful companies tick, right? And what we've noticed, and it ultimately comes down to the concept of agility, the concept of agile planning. And there's 4 particular values here, agile values, that I wanted to go over. So teamwork, the idea of being very collaborative, leaning into your team, leveraging their insights instead of working in silos. Evolution, giving up the idea of that's just the way things are done, right? Being open to change and understanding that change comes incrementally. The phrase, building a tall building one floor at a time. Empowerment over constraints. So this doesn't mean we're just abandoning policies and controls. Instead, it means having the right data at the right time and leveraging these controls and constraints to empower your team. And then finally, the growth mindset. So always focus on learning. Open your eyes, open your ears and your mind to continually assess the company. Look at what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, so you have this constant assessment that really helps drive continuous improvement. Okay. And you'll notice stark differences when you start looking at things through the agile lens. So, it's simply put, agile planning equals better business, right? So, you might look at things, from a non-agile perspective, where you might have looked at mitigating risk, now looks at optimizing performance, right? So you're taking the offensive on this, right? Instead of reporting, you're creating more meaningful storytelling, where you're telling narratives, you're using the full picture, all the details to tell the story of past, present, and future. Financial metrics turn into the comprehensive business metrics. As opposed to an annual budget, you're looking at a full-blown planning process. Your budgeting, your long-term plan, most importantly, your ability to reforecast and continually assess. Instead of just rolling it out to the team, you're engaging them. You're you're taking advantage of all of their insights to create that alignment. And that allows you to not just hit your numbers, but collaboratively build a better business.
Thanks, Ashley. So Solution BI Finance is combining their expertise with VENA solution to deliver value to their clients. So at Solution BI Finance, we have a deep understanding of the finance function. In fact, a lot of our finance professionals hold finance designations such as CPAs, MBAs, or PMPs. We have worked on several finance transformation projects, which we know all the best practices to implement in order to make a finance function a valuable business partner within their organization. Next, we have the role profile. So not only we know the business processes inside out, but we also invest a lot of time in training our employees on the latest technologies. So myself and a few of my team members, we are VENA certified. Finally, we have a strong expertise in EPM solution implementation. So whether consolidation, budget, or planning tool, we've worked on several implementation projects, and we know the key factors in order to make an implementation successful, and ensure a smooth transition. So we are really confident by, with our strong finance expertise, combined with a really leading FP&A tool such as VENA, we are definitely able to deliver value to organizations.
Awesome. And, this, in talking about that, at Solution BI and VENA, we want you guys to come full circle in terms of addressing all your finance needs. And it's simply, we look at it in 3 stages, right? So, from left to right, we look at simplifying your existing processes, budgeting, planning, forecasting, and really driving that analysis strength, right? Then we look at extending that. So extended planning to look at how do we turn our numbers into narratives, right? And offer insightful analysis. So processes that we can implement like your cash flow analysis, workforce planning, CapEx planning, what if scenario planning, and then moving to then close the loop and look at beyond planning. So how do you get that full performance management sphere, right? So using VENA to build out processes like tax provisioning, incentive compensation planning, your financial close, etc. Really closing the loop.
All right, let's get into the live demo. Drew, I'll let you share your screen.
Awesome, thank you. Perfect. Everyone can see my screen before I kick things off? And
Yes.
Can hear me? I see some smiles, fantastic. Okay, so what I'm gonna be doing today is I'm gonna be logging into the application in 2 different perspectives. The first will be a manager perspective, so we can understand within VENA what it would be like to establish a different process, whether it be an annual budget process, a monthly reforecast, consolidation process, or even a month-end close process, where we establish the workflow to go along with those different processes, as well as our files library where we build, maintain, and inventory existing templates and reports from your current process. And then our status tracker where you have insight into how and who and where everything resides pertaining to that process. From there, I'm going to log in as a business user perspective. So that would be an individual who is assigned to a number of different tasks. We'll go into that task management view and we'll check out a budget. We'll key in some data and get a look and feel for the application from that business user perspective. We'll submit the data. We'll submit the task and forward it off to our manager for review. And then we'll open up a report quickly and dive into the numbers to take a full circle. From there, we'll open up our agile planning template so we can see in the event that we're trying to understand how much cash we have on hand and forecast for cash inflows and outflows, then we'll be able to get a view into that as well. So logging in here to the secure browser, I land at the manager role. Now, within the application, there are a number of different roles as listed across the top. The user can have one role or many roles based on their permissions. Now, focusing here on the manager role, this is where we have our different folders created for our respective processes. So within the FP&A folder, we have our annual budget, we have monthly forecasts. Under the accounting folder, we have consolidations, month-end close. processes, but we'll focus here on our 2021 annual budget process. When I step in here, it takes us right to the workflow designer. Now, I liken this to a whiteboard. It's very much editable, drag and drop things around, grab an arrow, start really connecting the tasks associated to your process. But really what you're looking at, everything in between that start and that end block is what defines how the work is going to take place. And so to explain a little bit more what each different task will be, if I right click on the screen, you can see a list here of what we can add to the workflow. So starting with the input, this would be something like this gray task block. Individual assigned to input some different FX rates, perhaps at the beginning of the year, update some drivers. They would save that data and forward it off to the right-hand side, being a review task. So a manager going in, verifying the accuracy of the data, either rejecting it if they don't approve of it via the red arrow, or approving it off to the right-hand side via the green arrow. We have our blue report tasks where we have our financial reports and report packages. And then these activity blocks are in yellow here. And these are really containing a number of sub-processes within that have the same theme. So if I double click into this expense planning, you'll see in our business example, excuse me, we have a number of different entities that we're splitting out the expense planning process. So we can attribute individuals to their respective entities and make the assignments there. From here, if I click into the status tracker, this is going to take us to what I refer to as the all-seeing eye of the process, because it lists out every single task in a table view for us to understand what tasks are there, who the owners are, what status each task resides in, whether or not they're in a review status, the current review owners, and the due date. So you have a ton of information readily available to you. Think about eliminating all that administrative work of contacting individuals to get updates on where everything sits and how they're proceeding with their individual tasks. You can see all that information from here. And if you want, you can filter through the pie chart here, changing the different views of what task is in what state. Stepping over to the left-hand side is our files library. And here, this is again where we build, maintain, and inventory existing templates and reports from your current process. Now, we've split it up so we have an inputs form folder, so input templates, and a reports folder. But the theme here is that we have one planning template respected to the different type of planning, right? So one CapEx planning template, one labor planning, and one OpEx planning template. And the reason for that is we leverage centralized templates and reports. So we establish that structure one time, and then we leverage that planning template across all the different entities in our business example, across all different departments, all different years and scenarios. We simply use choose options within that planning template to determine how we're either planning for the data or how, in the example of a report, we wish to consume that data. And so if I return back to the workflow designer and we step into a specific input task, so we'll select New York expense budget. If I double click into this input task, this is where we establish who is going to be assigned to this task, what the instructions are, any supporting documents, the due dates, and the key piece being those task forms. These are the files that reside within our files library. So connecting what's been stored and created within the application then connects to that respective task. And once we're satisfied with everything that we've established, we return to the main workflow screen and we hit play and the process kicks off. So I'm just going to take a pause there. Looking back at what we saw where we can create a number of different processes, right? So it doesn't simply have to be an annual budget process, but it could be a monthly reforecast for the purposes of agile planning. It could be month-end closure or large-scale consolidations. We saw our status tracker giving us visibility into every single task that resides within our process, being able to ensure everything is being actioned in a timely manner, really giving us better oversight, likely reducing risk, and ultimately giving us time back to analyze the data that we're working with. And then our files library, where we build, maintain, and inventory existing templates and reports. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to log in as a business user. So an individual who's been assigned to open up some of their tasks, go in and key in some data, or in the event that they're more responsible for reviewing data, that they could do this here. And so when an individual logs in, as you'll notice across the top, this individual has fewer roles within the application. So this individual doesn't have that manager role. They're simply a contributor in this aspect. And this is the task management screen. So in order of operations, we have all their tasks listed out. Items that are overdue are going to be at the top and flagged in red. Items in blue are current. Items in gray are coming soon. And then view only would be in green. So any reports that they've been given access to, or any item that they've forwarded off for review as part of their process. So it's out of their hands. If they wish to filter between what they're consuming, this is the input view, any items that they've been assigned for reviews, and then reports can be viewed here as well. Now, I promised we would check out a file and key in some data. So I'm going to select our New York expense budget. And when I click into this task, this screen should be very much familiar on the right-hand side, because this is the finalized output of what we saw from within that workflow designer. So it's been established that these are all the details, the individuals that are going to be associated to this task. We have our unique instructions that have been provided, as well as some supporting documents for me to open up and kind of assist me all throughout my budget process. We also have our comments field here, which is very essential in keeping the conversation within the application associated to this respective task, as opposed to any conversations being held offline via email or via telephone. Everything can be contained within this text field here, and attachments can be also provided to continue the conversation. But without further ado, I'm going to check out this OpEx planning template, and we're going to begin keying in a budget. Now, the theme that you'll notice here is that Excel is opening up. Again, because Excel was the grid that we chose to work with, right? Keeping with that familiarity that everybody has with the application. So one of the themes to point out is we've opened up our OpEx planning template, and we have this beautiful structure in the background, but there's no data yet having been produced, right? We see that we have our scenario for budget in the columns, the periods across the columns, as well as the year. And then we appear to have some operational expense accounts on the left-hand side in the rows, but nothing's been produced. And the reason for that is, again, that centralized planning template. Until we confirm based on the choose box that we have here, how we wish to be planning by, well, it's not going to produce anything for us to see. And so in this example, I have access and permissions to plan for each of these departments that falls within the New York entity. But for today's purpose, we'll stick with D10. I could change the years if I like, as well as the budget. It could be forecast, it could be a what if scenario, or even a contingency plan. And once I hit OK, this is where the planning template is going to call up any information that might have already been planned by, as well as any actuals from the prior year. And so as you can see, there are some numbers that have already been planned by in these blue text boxes, excuse me. And now it's my turn to go in and just finish keying in some data for these last 3 accounts. So 2 themes. We have blue cells that are freeform edits, and then the white cells further below are locked. So individuals can't make updates. And the reason for that is there'd be a formula that's previously been established by the owner of the planning template, and therefore end users shouldn't have that availability to make any updates. In addition, we have our toolbar at the top here, where individuals can use along the way through the planning process, which I'll action throughout. And so I'm going to just begin keying in some data here. And as I would in Excel, just drag and drop some numbers. And I'm going to save this data back to the database. So coming up to our Save Data button, I choose to save it. It's now storing these data points back to our data model. And so if I were to clear them and hit refresh, the expectation is because they exist in our data model, the data points will return. So this is very much different from the sense of a static Excel save, where that is just a single instance that lives within your planning workbook. And so I delete them, I hit refresh, and the values return. And so just continuing on here, I'm going to key in some more figures at a basic formula. And just like that, I've keyed in my budget for the advertising account. Now, I haven't compared it to anything from last year's actual, so maybe I want to expand out my window here and reference what our actuals were, so that I can make a more educated plan for my budget here. And as you can see, I've overstated January by a considerable amount. So if I come over to January, if I click in, you'll notice, again, it's a white cell. I can't make an edit to it. It's also not a formula, so it's not referencing another tab within our planning template, which means the data is retrieved from the data model. In addition to that, if I want to get into the details, I can come up to our drill button and choose to do the drill transactions. And it's going to open up a data table for me to consume the data and help me plan by. So in this instance, we see a number of different invoices that make up that amount. In the event that this was perhaps 200 or 1,000 rows of information deep, I could filter by different vendors, slice and dice the data however I like, maybe produce some data visuals to see which vendor is spending most. The key piece here is that with the click of a button, I was able to access this data. I didn't have to contact my IT group requesting a SQL statement be made within the server to extract this data, all of which takes time, right? I had this readily available to me to quickly and easily get into the details. So returning back to the main tab here, I'm just going to collapse our actuals from last year and step down to promotions. Now, if I wanted, I could do a formula doing a month versus month comparison from last year's actuals, or to save myself some time, I can choose to use my functions, select a spread based on prior year values, and keying in something similar to last year's actuals of 16,000. I choose to adjust the values. And again, at the click of a button, I have produced data that's meaningful that I can quickly and easily gain trust with. Stepping up to consulting fees. If I need to plan at a more granular level of detail and not simply total up a value for a number of different items that might roll up to consulting fees, what I can do is I can leverage our line item details tool. So I can choose to insert multiple rows, and then I can simply confirm what I think the expense relates to. So maybe I'm splitting it out by individual consultants. And so I key in a planned figure for each individual. I paste those across for 6 months. And as you'll see, the values then subtotal up to the GL account. So giving the business users the flexibility to plan at a lower level. Now, just to scroll down and speak to some of these accounts that are containing white cells that are not editable. Travel expenses as an example. As you see, it is a formula referencing another tab within our planning template. If I try and make an edit to it, it's going to notify me that I can't. But what it'll do is it's going to take me to where that total comes from. And for this discretionary spend account, there's a number of different inputs that are required to figure out what that planned spend is going to be and determining how the spread methodology will play factor to those the spend. And so again, using that same principle of giving your team the flexibility to insert additional rows, I can confirm that we have a January Expo. And for speed purposes, I'll just copy and paste an individual here, going from LA to New York with a number of different costs associated, and then determining based on our drop-down menu, the driver-based logic or the spread methodology. And so if I spread it by 12 months, the cost is spread evenly. If I choose to force it to the first quarter, it adjusts accordingly. Or if I force it all to January, our value then exponentially increases for the period. And so returning back to our main tab, you can see then that value totals up. And this is what will be stored back for our budget for 2021 for our travel expense. Now, as I'm working through this, maybe I want to do a bit of rough work area or do some of my own math, maybe create some notes. And so what I can do is I can add a new tab within my template here, and I can just label it my Scratchpad and key in some information that I believe will be very useful for my manager who's going to be reviewing my budget for them to reference as they come in to see what I've done. And so just free form entry, typing some notes, some values, and coming up with a basic formula. And there I have my results. Now, the key piece here is that I'm remaining within this planning template. I'm remaining within the application that is VENA, and this story will hold true and be connected to my budget. Now, I know from past experience working in certain softwares, I would always revert out of that software to work within Excel, do a bunch of work, and then copy and paste that final value. In this example, the story remains within the planning template and it will be there for my manager to see where I came up with my planned spend. So if I return back to my OpEx planning tab, I can simply choose any cell that I want to update and reference this result. And so once I've done that, you'll notice two things. We have this red X appear on the left, and our comments field has turned red as well. And the reason for that is if I scroll up, we have this validation threshold of 20% based on last year's actuals, above or below. And so if I were to try and save data, I'm going to receive this notification saying, wait a minute, Drew, you've exceeded that threshold of 20%. Either adjust the values or add a comment. Now, this is a soft stop, so technically, yes, I could save it, but it would be of no benefit because I would prefer that the budget I submit has as much detail and falls within any sort of validation or threshold measure that's been set in place to provide my manager the details so that they're confident with the planned spend that I come up with. So I'm just going to put a note here to see the scratch pad and even reference that January Expo. And once I key in that note in the comments field, my validation clears. And so I can return here, I can choose to save data. And now all these points that I've keyed in are saving back to the database. Now, as I've been working through this, I know I've made a couple data saves, so I've changed some numbers around. And there's a couple of ways in which we can figure out what changed in terms of like an audit trail. And so I can select a single cell and I can choose to do a drill saves, and it's going to open up a save history window to tell me who made the save, when the save was made, on what planning template that save was made, and for what amount. So quickly and easily, I can see, okay, these are the numbers that I changed in the past couple of minutes. If I want on a more macro level, I can come up to our audit trail, and this is going to give me visibility into very much the same details of who, when, for what task that data save was related to, but this is on the entire template. And so the key piece here is that I can select two of these data saves and choose to compare them. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up an old extract and a new extract. And on that new extract, it's going to highlight all values that have changed from that old to the new save. And so as you see here, this title is New OpEx Planning. If I come to the main tab, it's highlighting every single value that I keyed in and changed from that one save to the next. And not only that, it tells me with notes what the value changed from. So I don't have to open up the two files, put them side by side. It's going to highlight them and provide me notes regarding them as well. So as you can see, a red cell is referencing a formula and a green highlighted cell is referencing a new value. So what I'll do is I'll just close out of these two. And I'll return to our main template. And I'll just kind of do a quick recap of what we saw. So we stepped into the planning template, right? Acknowledging that it's a centrally planned template where we have to confirm the choose options to determine how and what department and what year and scenario we're planning by. We keyed in freeform values, we did formulas, we did some drag and drop, we added line item details, we spreaded our values, we added comments when we hit validations, we added scratch pads, and we drilled into numbers. And we drilled into the save history as well as the audit trail within a planning template. So a lot of visibility into the numbers just to enable your team to be able to work with a tool that is flexible, but also gives them access to see, where numbers change. Very, very, very flexible tool. So I'm going to close out of this. I've already saved it, and I'm going to return to the, excuse me, the web browser. And assuming we are satisfied with our budget, we would check it in and we would submit it. And so once this is submitted, it goes into an in review state. It is now view only. So if I come down and refresh my list, it's no longer in my to-do list, and it's now appearing in my view only list of tasks. So it's out of my hands. My manager's now been notified that it's their responsibility to go in and complete their review, and I can't make modifications to it unless they choose to reject it. So I think what we'll do quickly before stepping over to the Agile planning template is I'm going to open up a report so we can kind of see some of those data points that we just saved living live within a report. So I'm going to open up our corporate dashboard here. And again, the same theme holds true. We're opening up a report. It's centralized report. So there's going to be some dashboards in the background, but there's no data being produced just yet until we confirm the options that we want to select on this window. So we'll stick with everything that we see here with the exception of entity. So now I have the flexibility to change different entity view. And as you'll see here, we have these different roll-ups. So a number of different entities roll up to sales and distribution. There's 2 that roll up to manufacturing centers. And then we can choose to look at the entire business by function. The key piece here is that if I want to select just New York, then certainly I can do so. I'll consume the data and analyze it based on just that single entity. If I choose sales and distribution as a parent, it's going to aggregate all that data for each of the entities, for all the departments for me. I don't have to manually consolidate report after report after report. The system's going to do that nearly instantaneously for me. And so if I choose by function, again, it's going to aggregate everything that rolls up to it. In the instance that you need to work with alternative hierarchies, you can certainly establish those within your data model. And so you can consume in a report view data by region. So in this instance, we have those entities rolling up based on US and Canada and Europe. And so what I'll do is I'll just select organization by function and everything else that I see here. I'll select OK, and this is where that report is again calling up all information pertaining to every entity, every department for 2021's budget scenario, with April being our current view. And so now we can take a look at our financial health, our operational health, our people health, and our customer and pipeline health. So a great view into the different sources of data coming from our CPM tool, our HRIS tool, as well as our ERP. And if I expand the window here, I can slice and dice the data however I like. Maybe I want to compare just the budget and the actuals. So I can throw in a filter quickly and all of my dashboards will update accordingly. If I clear it, they'll refresh back to the original structure. Now, if I want to jump into some of the numbers a bit more, I can simply come in, take a look and click on a value and choose to drill down on these numbers. So here, I'm going to produce this data table extract. And there's a number of things I can do. I can filter, or one of the exciting pieces is I can use our Excel's AI ideas tool to produce some meaningful visuals that are going to be doing some form of analysis of this data set, perhaps any anomaly detection within. And I can insert these pivot charts into my report to further analyze. So I can see here in our case that our cell phone that is 64 gigabytes is outperforming in sales almost double our next leading product. So very useful when analyzing data. If I step over to the analysis tab quickly, I can do a comparison of actuals to budget, whether it be the month view, the year-to-date view, or a full year comparison. Now I know I focused on the OpEx planning template, so scrolling down to look at some of those operational accounts. I can see here there's that advertising account we made a number of changes to. And if I come up to the drill button and choose to drill down, this time I'm going to throw on some filters. So I'm just going to look for that New York entity that we've been planning by, our department D10, sales and service. And then you'll see those 4 first periods that we had planned by within that OpEx planning template. So assuming, an individual such as a CFO were to be going through any of these reports and they came across this, I would say, an anomaly in terms of an overstated value comparatively speaking to the rest of the first third of the year, they can come in and they can do a drill save on the value, and that they can see that the individual on this date made a save within the OpEx planning template. But to take it a step further, if you select that item and choose to view it, it's going to call you back to that OpEx planning template where that save was made. And so I can see this individual had clearly planned for a very large spend in January, not so much for the remainder of the year. They added some commentary relating to the scratch pad, so I can come in here and reference what their calculations were or any notes. And I have all that visibility and to see where numbers were being driven from. So a lot of access there. But what I'll do now is I'll just quickly close out of this. And I'm going to log in to view our agile planning piece. And so again, within that task management screen, I come into our agile planning adjustments task, and there are 2 files that have been assigned to us. So if I check this one out, it's going to open up Excel. and it's going to allow us to begin planning based on the entity view, department view, year period, and scenario. And so if I'm satisfied with the selection that's on this list, I can choose OK. And again, there's no confirmation of any daily cash flow or monthly cash flow just yet until we made that selection. So now it's calling up the data within our data model, and we see this is what we've planned in terms of daily cash flow and monthly cash flow for the specific entity and department. Now, just thinking about having to do reforecasts on the monthly, thinking about inconsistency in a year, 2020 has been quite variable. We can come in quickly here and start planning at a daily level as well as a monthly level, cash inflows and cash outflows. So if I expand the window on a daily basis, you can key in cash inflows as well as planning for cash outflows. And then thinking about the respective areas, OPEX planning, CAPEX planning, workforce planning. Coming into each of these tabs, you can quickly key in a daily or monthly planned spend. So CAPEX, adding additional assets. Workforce planning, hiring for new hire groups. So instead of getting to the granular level of individual headcount, respective planning to a certain person, you can plan at that higher group level, as well as associated layoffs, right? Seasonal workers, a lot of industries are seeing a lot of outflow of headcount. So being able to plan by that here. And then AR and AP, any loans that need to be attributed to the upcoming forecast can be input here on those tabs. And at the end, once individuals have keyed in the different, expenses, different assets to be added, and different hire groups to add or remove, the users have the ability to make comparisons of those different plans that they've done. So in this instance, we were looking at our contingency plan when we opened up the file, but we can update here if we want to make comparisons between the budget, the forecast, the what if scenario, 5, 4, whatever the case may be. Individuals can come in here and work with the different drop-down lists to change the data. So perhaps we can compare contingency 1 to what if 5, review the delta and percentage change, and the data is going to refresh for us. And we'll just have to scroll down to review some of those expenses that have been planned by. And so I think from my side of things, I'm going to stop talking and hand it back to the team because I want to make sure there's enough time that we can open up the floor for discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. It's always nice to see how the application is really user friendly. So that's for sure a big win. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. So let's take a look at some customer success stories.
Yeah. So, and thanks, Drew, for that. I hope, we were able to impress, the ease, leveraging VENA, but at the same time, being able to standardize with this really robust, calculation engine or database engine in the background that helps you manage just one instance, but then use the workflow to help distribute it. So when we talk about customers and how they gain advantage, it all comes down to your return of investment. So whether working with Berkshire Hathaway, who saw a 10x capacity increase, they went from doing 8 budgets before VENA to 80 budgets in the same amount of time. Or Capstone Infrastructure, they're an energy-based organization who was able to shave almost a week from their close time. So it begs the question, what would you and your team be able to do with a week's worth of time? Again, Cumming Corporation, a construction-based consultancy, they went from having a 4-week reporting cycle to develop their reports down to the same day push of a button with VENA. So this really talks to the ability to for VENA to eliminate, what we're trying to do is eliminate all those administrative tasks that quite often makes up 80% of the whole process, and focus your energy and your team's energy on the meaningful analysis that will help you to drive better decision making. Okay. And we wanted to leave you with two key things. You know, we're very proud of a couple of initiatives really to help you learn more, not only about the tool, but about FP&A. So our Plan to Grow initiative, which is really effective, it's focused on educating the market about FP&A approaches and best practices, right? So industry leaders, a lot, you know, some of our 800 consultants get together, and we've basically come up with 30 or more CPE accredited sessions, all focused around FP&A, so planning, reporting, BI, and all really key info packages. They're all free and all demand. So I strongly recommend you to check out the website, plantogrow.com. The other item is our preview VENA. So now, you know, you're able to actually by yourself go through a self-navigated demo of VENA. So if you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Solution BI team or us, and we'll help you access that for sure.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley. Amazing. Now some time for questions and answers. So I'm going to go ahead. Okay, so we have a question in French. I'll try to translate it. So one of the questions is how the consolidation, budgeting, and forecasting is done. Is it possible to do a what if scenarios on a consolidated cash flow? Not sure if Drew, if you can answer that question.
Yeah, I can answer that first. You know, definitely the budgeting and forecasting, what you saw was the ability, you know, even in budgeting, we'd stand up an entire process end to end where you cover, let's say you're doing your P&L budgeting. We focus on building standardized templates for the different aspects of your P&L. We have ready to use packages that are quick to implement, but we can also do customized solutions for you as well. So it's basically building specific templates to capture the information. You're only managing one version. You're using the workflow to distribute that across your user base and have them enter the information. That information is saved centrally, and now anyone in your team can access reports and analysis on the fly, right? So that's how we facilitate our budgeting, our forecasting in the same manner. They're all collection-based. The same thing with your consolidated cash flow. It's a means of leveraging those templates and the workflow to build that. And we have pre-designed packages for each.
One of which would be something like a top-down adjustments, looking at that consolidated view and allocating expenses and revenue across the entire view, as opposed to a respective department or entity in our use case.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is that, you know, in speaking about what if scenarios, VENA has the ability to manage multiple scenarios. So in a lot of organizations, they not only want to maintain a budget, they might want to do several iterations of the budget where you're changing and updating the drivers, right? And wanting to see how this impacts your bottom line, how this impacts your P&L, your balance sheet and cash flow. So with VENA, you can easily take your existing budget with our functionality, quickly copy all of the data within a matter of seconds to another scenario. And now with this new scenario or your what if scenario, you can play around with the drivers, you know, update your currency and just as an example, and see how this drives and how it impacts your end result. So it's very effective in that way.
Thanks, Ashley. We had another question. I think it was answered by Drew, but I'll just read it in case people didn't see it. So one of the question was, I know that Power BI can connect to VENA. Is it easy? So Drew, I think you answered yes. So VENA, we natively integrate with Power BI. So yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is easy to connect.
We have a native integration with Power BI, and to establish that connection, Within the application of VENA, we establish an API user code and API user key. And then within Power BI, you search for data as you normally would, or retrieve data, and you establish that connection to the data model where all your data resides.
Yeah.
And based on the user permissions that are applied to the individual trying to access that data, they would be able to see whatever data they're restricted to.
Perfect. And I'll just add to that. So we have a very strong partnership with Microsoft, and we're one of the few vendors who actually serves as a source in Power BI. So if you actually open the different sources, VENA comes up as one of them. What that does is eliminates all the setup effort that goes into using Power BI. So automatically you're able to model your data in VENA and then have this capability to platform Power BI. Now you can take advantage of those very easy to use and intuitive dashboards and everything. So it's been a huge value for a lot of our customers.
Perfect.
And,
So I think,
and we're going to be able to, I'm sorry, Salma.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's going to be a pleasure for us to answer any questions that you have around, VENA and Power BI. As you know, we are partners with Microsoft on Power BI, and we have a strong expertise on that as well. So we will gladly answer questions as they come up.
Mm-hmm. So far, I think we had 2 questions. I'm going to leave our contact on the screen. So if ever you have more questions later on, please do not hesitate to contact us. We would be glad to answer your questions. And also we will be sending this presentation to you in the upcoming week. It's going to leave 10 more seconds in case there is another question. Okay, I think that's it. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it. And again, we're available if you have more questions. Have a great day.
Thanks
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.